All units, please stand by. Rob Ferrer and Chris Voller have priority air. Go ahead, the channel is yours.
All right, this is Priority Air. You've got Rob Ferrer, Chris Voller.
Yeah, just a couple of cops who have been around for quite a while now, as it turns out. I got 24 years. I bounced around G Division for a while and then a bunch of different places in BC, and now doing union work. And Chris?
Yeah, I'm 18 years in. I've been with the force here for a while. I've got 7 postings in throughout British Columbia, all of them, a couple isolated posts. Spent a lot of my time on Vancouver Island, which I'm very fortunate, in my opinion, to have been there. I grew up in Alberta, kind of mid and southern. So now that I found the water, I don't really want to leave it.
No, and not as much wind. Yeah, I came out of Saskatchewan, so I still say like I'm still somehow a Riders fan, but I left Saskatchewan 30 years ago. So it's not exactly recent, but I don't think I'm planning on leaving BC. It's pretty awesome living in the Okanagan now, which it's all the lakes and people generally tend to stick around this area. The reason we started this podcast and are starting this is just to get the voice out for members, to talk about things that matter to members. There are a number of podcasts in the police area. It seems like a lot of them focus on sort of the mental health resilience side. And while we may touch on that stuff, I'm sure we will. This is more about like trying to get the narrative out and speak about the things that matter to cops. You know, that's really, really what it is.
Yeah, and I don't think it matters like whose shoulder flash is on your arm. To us, a cop's a cop. You know, I guess whose pension and whose paycheck, it probably matters in that respect. But for the most part, it's a family, right? And so one of the big issues I think Rob and I both have is mainstream media really controls that narrative around our lives. And when I say our lives, I mean like all cops. You know, how many times we go to those files, we deal with these issues, and then you wake up the next morning and you see what's being reported on, and it's not right.
Yeah.
Not only is it inaccurate, but it paints us in a light that has no bearing on what actually transpired. And so Rob and I want to take a little bit of time out of our days to try and give a voice to what policing is. And I think, unfortunately, we've been kind of muted, right? You know, different forces, politics, everyone's afraid to speak out. And Rob and I think, are in a real fortunate circumstance where, 1, we're towards the end of our careers, and 2, we're willing to just say it. You know, it's nothing bad, but everyone's afraid to just say the way it really is for fear of being saying, look at you, white balding male. And yes, we are, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting. So this is an interesting topic, I think. And the human side of cops, I think through all of it, one of the things I really want to make sure we can try and cut through is to that human side of cops. It's so easy to see a paper headline and look at police as sort of this thing instead of a bunch of individual people. It's like the police. Ironically, I got a call this morning from a member who was one of the members who was involved in an incident that was reported on. He preferred to speak about his specific incident, but he called me. It's been going on for about a year. And he said his family, his work life, everything is just in hell. He's waiting, surprisingly, he's waiting on the IAO, which will be then potentially waiting on the courts, waiting on Crown to make a decision, waiting on the courts, waiting. But the narrative that's out there, he can't speak about. He can't say anything. He's stuck just waiting, and everybody, the public can base their opinion off whatever the article said at the time, because whether the article says, goes way overboard in terms of its erroneous reporting, I'll say, or slightly less, a retraction doesn't matter. Like at the point that it's out there, it's out there. And that is the narrative. And at least certainly for this member, in his mind, that's just what it is. So that's what he's now been stuck with for a year, lost sleep. So I think it's important to talk about the human side of police as it relates to these events. It's not just a monolith of policing as a group identity. Well, that group identity does exist, of course.
Yeah, but you're right on, Rob. And I would say, like having grown up in a policing family, my dad was a member as well. And on my 13th birthday, he left my birthday dinner to go to a call at work, ended up shooting and killing two people, which subsequently is what actually took me from Alberta to BC. And our family lived it. He was the one in the RCMP, he was the one in the police force. And again, you know, I may say RCMP, but it's any force, whether you're in the States, whether you're in Canada, like it's any force, but it's not just that person who's in the force, it's their family.
Yeah, 100%. Like, so actually talk about that just a little bit, if you don't mind, Chris. Like, so you're 14, not the birthday present you had expected or hoped for, but the one you ended up with. So that the media is not the same. So 14, you're probably, in your late 20s now, early 30s, but it's a number of years ago. So social media isn't the same thing as it is today. Media probably isn't exactly the same as it is today. Like, it's broadcast now. But did that follow you out to the island? Not just you as a family unit, but I mean you as in, did people know? Did the community know? Did people know? Sort of, did people in school know?
Yeah, not to sound old, but I guess like newspapers were social media then. So everyone got that. And it was a tragic circumstance. I don't take away just the police side. I look at all sides of it as a human. And for that family and my dad's shooting, it happened on the Swatina Reserve, which is just outside of Okotoks near Calgary. And it was a lady who was shooting at a couple social workers who were there to remove her children. And then when my dad was called to assist, he was shot at by her. He tried some verbal de-escalation, uh, didn't work. And so he ended up using a shotgun to shoot her. Subsequently, her son was standing behind her and he was also struck and killed, unbeknownst to my dad, who was ducking behind the kind of engine block area of a Suburban. So there's a bit of a standoff that moves forward. Later, they find, unfortunately, them both deceased. Tragic for that family. And as a result of that, and the fact that it's an Indigenous community, it's a child, there's a lot of shit happening there. It did get a lot of media. So it followed us to Salt Spring, which is where I end up going, Salt Spring Island, which is this little island between Vancouver and Vancouver Island.
Some would say the epicenter of hippie culture for BC. Some would say. I would.
I would agree with you. And ironically, I had been there not too long before, fishing on the outskirts of it, and asked my dad where we were fishing because his parents live on Vancouver Island. And he said, oh, it's Salt Spring Island, some little artsy fartsy island. And literally 4 months later, we lived there. Yeah. So it follows you and it follows the family. So I remember as a kid walking to school and my parents telling me, like, if the media tries to talk to you today, just don't look at them, just go straight into school. My teachers were really good. And we had all of these things happening at us. I thought that the RCMP was being super supportive to my dad. And in retrospect, the reason we had members at our house all the time is it turns out they were on double time to keep us safe because there had been some subsequent threats against our family. So small town stuff, but it follows you everywhere. And that's just from the eyes of a child, let alone the member. We grow up, and I'm sure you can speak to it, Rob. We've been in these situations where you're not sure how the next 2 minutes play out, but it's life and death.
Yep, 100%. And so you end up with this, and I think that's an important reminder. Like, we're not trying to take away that these incidents, that the cop is the sole victim in this. That's not the point. There are layers upon layers, but we're going to be spending the time really talking about not the social issues around whatever led to it. We're going to be talking about it from the cop's perspective and those decisions. Like, I'm sure your dad's decision, it's a horrible decision. What do you do? Like, it's an absolute no-win situation, but it's the situation. We've had, 2 years ago, I don't know exactly the numbers we're at this year. 2 years ago, there were, I believe, 24 police-involved shootings in BC, and every one of those is a tragedy, no matter what the outcome was, for sure. but they get reported as though, sometimes they get reported, I should say, as though this is like a conscious decision that a cop made to go to work today and shoot someone, and horrible cop, and, poor victim. Well, there's plenty now that have come out that's not the narrative. That's not the case. But once that's out there, you had one on Vancouver Island, where a police dog got stabbed a few times.
Gator.
Right?
Yeah.
And killed, right? What do you do? That's tragic all around, for sure. But the cop didn't make the decision to start that incident, right? The cops are attending something because the public is in danger or there's a call related. Cops aren't going around looking for these things. But once they're in that situation, your options are very limited. There's no, we'll just walk away, we'll deal with it tomorrow. That's not an option, virtually ever.
Right. We're not accountants. Our work doesn't end at 8 because all of a sudden it says, oh, it's this time at night. You've worked a really long day. It's 8 o'clock as an accountant. Better put that calculator down and everything will be exactly the same when you come back the next day.
Yeah.
You're dealing with human beings and situations evolve. And there's the old adage, damned if you do, damned if you don't. So should those police officers not have intervened and then that individual goes and kills someone, well, those police officers did a terrible job. And where were they? They are irresponsible. In this circumstance, the members do intervene. It becomes tragic. And those police officers are damned for what they did. So, where's the middle ground here? And I agree with you, Rob. That incident in Campbell River with Gator, I know very well. I know all of those members who were involved in that circumstance. All of them are friends of mine personally. And I can tell you, those 7 guys are absolute studs. And what they went through was tragic. Not just the incident, though. The incident in itself was tragic. And I'll pause there and say this. Police officers respond to the behavior that is presented to them. Just like what Rob said, we're not going out there saying, this is how I want my day to roll. Okay? And yes, in that incident, we have to deal with what's before us. For all these people who want to say, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Did you know that growing up impoverished will lead to X amount of more likelihood? Did you know that growing up from this minority group will lead to this much more whatever? I don't disagree. But guess what? Our ability to get in the hot tub time machine in that 2-minute window and try and save a life, those aren't social effects we control. We're dealing with a person in front of us with a knife, with a gun, with whatever. And those are the situational factors we get to control. I get so mad listening to these politicians talk when I watch the news, and they finger point at times to us. I can't unengineer this. You control how much money schools get. You control how much money goes to Indigenous affairs. You control how many police officers there are. And you're pointing to our people who were there in a 2-minute window risking their lives to say we should have been responsible for their economic upbringing? No.
Yeah.
Get bent.
Well, it's impossible. It's not even, and so sometimes I think, people are doing it, maybe trying to be inflammatory because that sells. But I think bringing it back to the media, I guess it's too much to ask for centrist approaches, right? I think maybe it is too much to ask. So then what do we do as a police culture, as a police organization when that happens? Because if they are going to report in the way they report, and I think that's part of the point of what we want to try and do here is to, without getting into the facts, right? Because we don't know the facts. I will be on, upfront with that. We don't know all the facts of what happened at any given event, but neither do they when they report it inflammatory. Neither do they. Last week, I had a conversation with someone up in Prince George with the news up there, and there was the IAO they had announced that they were sending another file to Crown. And in there, they didn't talk a single thing about the behavior of the subject, but they did put in the fact that, the police officer shot them after approaching them. So, and then they said, well, we don't want to say anything else because that could, there could be a trial out of this. So, we don't want to sway anybody. So hold on. The IAO's investigating police. So the only person that they're forwarding anything to Crown on is police. So you're willing to say what the actions of the police were. Isn't that the person that you should be worried about affecting the outcome? Like, it's their trial. If there's a trial, if indeed there becomes a trial, it's for the cop. So you're not willing to talk about what happened that led to that, but you have to, in my mind, it's an inflammatory way of dealing with it. You then say the actions, the force that was used by the cop, but you refuse to talk about what led to that. Well, how about report on neither of them? How about just leave it open if that's going to be the case? But you can't just prejudice one. I guess that would be my point.
Yeah, so the IIO, and for anyone not aware, that's the Independent Investigations, which are an oversight unit with the police in British Columbia. We're subject to oversight, which Rob and I are fully for, to be clear.
100%.
We just want it to be timely, transparent, fair, maybe live up to the name of independence built into it.
Yep.
And to that point, as police officers, I think a lot of the time we find things frustrating as the parody of it. So I've worked homicides. I've worked a number of investigations and use of force backgrounds. Many of us have a strong understanding of what Section 25 of the Criminal Code allows for, doesn't allow for. I used to be a use of force instructor with the police force I was with. And so when we have that background and we watch a oversight investigation draw out for, let's say, 5 years, one as recently, as Rob alluded to last week, as 4 years ago, one in Alberta announced 2 weeks ago was over 6 years, and that member's retired. And I look at the evidence, I look at the circumstance. They literally have witnesses who are compelled to give actual statements. So it's not like Rob and I would go to a bar fight, somebody dies, you come up trying to get statements, people tell you to pound sand and whatever adjectives they want to use, and we can't force them against their will to tell us what happened. But in an oversight investigation, the police officers who are designated as witness officers have to. They have to give statements.
Yeah.
So how can it be that this takes 5 years? I honestly, I don't have an answer for you as listeners. I apologize. It baffles me.
It does defy, and there will be lots of reasons given, right? It's funding. There's not enough resources. We don't have enough bodies. The forensic lab is slow. The forensic lab is overtaken. There's always reasons.
You've just described every police force there is in Canada.
And almost every job. I've had jobs before this, not many, to be clear, but every job is. I've never heard anybody say, man, we got way too many staff and everything is flowing way too smoothly. That is every job. So I'm not really that keen or interested in that. And I think to the point that I really care about is the individuals on all sides. And I will say the person that was involved in the incident that wasn't the cop, right? Their family is also wondering what's happened. So the community is also wondering what's happening. But I know, having gone to trials for some of these members 6 years later, they've spent 6 years of their life in hell, wondering, will I have a job? My parents, or will my kids have a father or mother at home? Am I going to go to jail for this? What is happening? Even though they may well know in their mind very well that they did the right thing, just going on for 5 or 6 years on something that is on video very frequently, that there are compelled witnesses, it's just much too long and not acceptable. And the other part that is, there are some jurisdictions in Canada where that doesn't seem to be the case. So then it comes down to, well, how can that be the case? How can in some jurisdictions it seems to flow very smoothly, and in others it seems to be, is it politically motivated? I don't know, like what the slow walk is. There was a head of an organization, a police oversight organization in Canada at one point, and I won't mention his name, but he did say comments like, I want to see a cop do the perp walk. You know that he's never been a cop in any manner, because I've never even heard of the perp walk. Like, I don't know anybody. Maybe you had people that talked about the perp walk. Like, I know what he's talking about because
I think that's the dance that Serena Williams did at the Super Bowl, isn't that?
Yeah, it might be. But he said that out loud to people, and that's crazy. Like, you imagine cops going in and saying, okay, my whole goal in life is to just, target an individual, and I want to get that individual guilty for something. Like, that's not how it works, and nor should it work that way. So I found that type of stuff very distasteful, but the timelines and the effect it has on people and on members and their families, and the families for sure, back to sort of your story, that wasn't an oversight thing, but just the effect on the families is hard to overstate.
Yeah, and it just doesn't even end there. So, like, the first court, which you touched on earlier in this episode, is the court of public opinion, right? The relevancy of what is put out there, and then unfortunately the absence of what is not put out there. And so that would be your police forces who don't come out. And I don't want to prejudice an investigation, so I appreciate they're not going to say everything, but you can say when something is incorrect. You can say when something's false. You know who was really good with VPD? Chu. He came out and he would say, that is not what happened. Perfect, right? Like, just that advocacy, thinking that there's someone in your corner, because so much of the time as a police officer, you just feel like you're kind of fighting the world. And I know a little bit that's us in our own head, but no one calls 911 to say what a great day it is. No one is saying, hey, police officer over there, thanks for everything you did. You might get that. But like, if people wave with all of their fingers up, that's the ideal day, right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard when you go through an incident where you are stuck in what is like the no-win scenario, and you have two choices: die or go home to your family. Well, shit. I think we want to go home to our families. And I don't know many other professions where that's the goal at the end of their shift. But for us, that's it.
Yeah.
Just want to get home. We want to do what we need to do to keep Canadians safe, keep our community safe. But I also want to kiss my kids on the forehead again. And then, after we've been through a terrible experience, because taking a life is not easy, it is not what anyone wanted, it is not the situation we want to be in, then we're going to be vilified. And while we're doing that, it's silence in the background, almost validating those, what I would say, erroneous headlines, sometimes outright lies, sometimes misplaced, misguided, misunderstood. There's a lot of miswords. But the point is, it's inaccurate. And the members need to feel that there's somebody behind them.
Well, and I think the research seems to be showing that the higher percentage now of whatever mental health disorder, whether it's PTSD or major anxiety or depression, whatever it is, a great deal of it now seems to be coming from the organizations, not from the incidents. And part of that is, now again, not a psychologist, but it seems like from what I've read and been informed about from people who are, is that a lot of it comes from the lack of feeling supported. And I think it's such a huge thing. And I don't know how you can, if it's 5 years later, if there's an oversight investigation going on for 3, 4, 5 years, or the media is clearly inflammatory, then I think it is incumbent on an organization to stand up for its people. People can make mistakes and I'm not going to, I'm not talking specifically about shootings even, but an individual in any organization can do something less than perfectly. Like that does happen. Like my
wife told me.
Yeah, I've heard that. But I don't think making a mistake or doing something less than optimally is like a precondition for no support. Like the moment that you do something that is not perfect, you're now a leper, and we'll push you off to the side and let the media and the public chew you up. And sometimes that's going on for 4 years, and every year there's an anniversary, and the forces, very few of them come out. Very few. I've seen examples. There have been some notable examples. Ray Bernardi's comes to mind in Soyuz, but like when I have to think of something that happened 12 years ago or whenever that was, where he came out publicly very supportive of the member, when that's the example, the most poignant example I can think of is more than a decade ago. Maybe there's a call for a few more opportunities for support of the membership who are willing for the public and the organization to go out there and put their lives on the line every day.
So tell me, 3 years ago, what did you get for Christmas? Tell me 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now tell me, in a traumatic incident 5 years ago, what the sequence of events was just before you pulled the trigger.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me a break, right? And so what we hope from an investigation, and what the purpose of court is to give good evidence so that the trier of fact, the judge, can make an assertion and then contrast it with the law. So how can we possibly say we're being successful when we're bringing a trial in 5 years later if those principles are eroded? Yeah, terrible, right? And to the point you made, every day is hell. So 500, let's say 1,500 days, that member has woken up thinking about it. And also, the more you think about it, the more you're like, am I remembering the incident, or am I remembering the nightmare of the incident, or am I just remembering how I remembered it? And over time, things will shift.
Well, I think at some point we'll do an episode on memory, because memory is a very fallible thing. I think people often give too much emphasis on memory. And what is memory? Memory is based up on a number of things. It would be great to have someone on to talk about actually memory, because that's a great point. Like I can barely remember what I had for dinner 2 days ago. And you can remember major incidents. Like I was at my psychologist a few weeks ago and talking about a specific incident with a guy I had worked with who ended up tragically getting killed years ago. I can remember every specific detail about that, but not before it, not after it, but that. Right? So like you can remember things, specific things, but to try and remember when you're involved in a use of force incident, and they're not all shootings. Remember, like some of these things are not, and some of the things that hit the paper are not. Sometimes they're tackling someone that looks bad.
Donnybrook.
And I will say, use of force looks bad. So to be very clear, if someone does not want to get arrested and you show up to arrest them and they decided they want to fight, it is not going to look good. It is not going to be simply a matter of grabbing their earlobe and pulling them to the ground, right? Like that is not how it's going to look. It's always going to look bad. So if there's ever video, it's always going to look bad. When it's broadcast out there, it virtually always looks bad and attracts a lot of eyeballs. And so from a paper's perspective or a media perspective, they have to pay their bills. So they don't really care about simply reporting or being fully fair on what may have happened. And I'm not begrudging all of media, but generally speaking, the incident will look bad. If you have video of something, and I think of Chief Allen in Alberta, where there wasn't a shooting, that was a hard tackle. That's what that was. But it still looked bad. And man, that went everywhere. That went international.
Right. But was it the use of force or the combination of use of force and politics?
Well, it was that's the point. I think that's the more salient point on all of it, is the politics are such a huge piece of all of it. So
right, because
what can be done? What can be done? How do you convince, you want police leaders to speak up for their members? Great. You want media to be more, would I say, fair or generous in their reporting? Perhaps. But I think some of it does come down to what can police and police leaders do, I think, because we've seen it's generally hands off. It's, I'm not getting involved. I'm not getting involved. I'm not saying anything. I'm not doing anything. And then, it just is allowed to just keep going.
Education. For me, I think that's one of the biggest ones. If we started saying things and normalizing the idea that that's not okay behavior, I think we've just moved so far, and I'm not going to try and be political here, but we've moved so far to the left that at this point, when a police officer uses force, everyone just goes, we don't use force a lot. We do not go in hands on, is usually the term police officers use often. But when we do, it's a result of someone's behavior. It's not something that we can do. We can de-escalate, we can try, but I assure you, there are times, irrespective of how compassionate, soft, caring you are, you can't make someone do something they don't want to do. And there's a line in the sand when you are required to do it, because if you don't, they could hurt other people too. So at that point, when you go hands on, one, I want to go home. Two, I don't want to be disproportionate amount of force. I don't want to hurt them, but I also don't know exactitude. I don't know, if I hit them with like 72% of my strength, that looks like the right place today. We are human beings too, right? I do not have great shoulders. So when I get into a fight and somebody starts arm locking me, I'm in trouble. Like, I think a lot of people really think that we are every character they've ever seen on a police sitcom. And so we'll just go, you can be Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you can be Law and Order, but no matter what happens to you, you'll be fine and you're there for the next episode. In fact, right after you get into this Donnybrook and this chase and like all of the glory and the guts, 2 scenes later, you're fine. You don't actually have any bruising. And you're just in the locker room being like, yeah, that was a tough one, guys. Okay, see you for the next shift.
Yep.
No, our bones break. Our memories can be burned into our brain to the point where we are afraid of that incident because we've been there before. I just don't get that. Like, I guess on TV, they don't ever show police officers being afraid. And I kind of appreciate they're trying to give us like a little bit of a hero vibe going on, like firefighters. But the reality of it is, I have been afraid at several calls. You don't know what happens next. And I don't know why the general public transposes television and projects it onto real life. I don't think in many other circumstances people think that there are a large number of turtles that live underneath in the sewer that have different colored ribbons on, that they come up at night, they fight crime. Those are fake. Ninja Turtles, though they are entertaining, are not real. When I look at other groups, there are ones that wear pajamas. When their powers combine, they make some sort of a dinosaur, the Power Rangers. Like, everyone can discern that media, though they fight crime, is not real. But yet, when they see Brooklyn Nine-Nine, when they see these other sitcoms, all of a sudden, the police, the real police, are supposed to have those same endemic qualities. And I'm never going to have a jawline like Terry Crews. I can't. It's not fair.
No, although I will say there's probably a lot to learn about police culture from Brooklyn Nine-Nine in terms of how they interact with each other. Well, maybe that's for a different day. Yeah. No, I think those are great points. I think part of it is expectation, and I think that's back to what this is all about. This is, trying to get that voice out, trying to say to people, police are humans who are out there trying to do a great job for their community. Use of force is a very, very, very small part of what happens. Like, it's very small. I don't know what the exact stat is, but like It's something like 0.01% of files. So of calls. Very, very small. And of course, it gets the largest and the lion's share of the media. But let's try and make it so that it's a fair representation of the amazing people that are out there trying to do well for their communities, and not an opportunity to be, I think people love seeing someone knocked down. There is that aspect, right? Like the Tiger Woods, right? Like people loved watching him fall from grace. So I think there's some of that. There's some small percentage of people that want to see that. And so maybe that's who's getting fed here when the media is doing, maybe either dishonest might be too strong, unfair representation of what happened in an incident.
Well, just on that note, I think like investigative journalism is something that we kind of grew up with. That was the pretense. It was led to believe that whatever the article was you were reading or you were watching was methodical. People looked at it. They got different opinions. There was some research done. And as social media has evolved, as the media has changed with it, there's a lot of opinion pieces. And I think a lot of people still think, because I heard this on the news, this is accurate.
Yeah, that's fair.
Nope, that's an opinion.
Yeah.
Right. And as a police officer, when you investigate things, it's not an opinion. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be well-rounded. So you take statements from everyone you can, from all the different perceptions that you can, including the accused. Like what is it that you saw? What did you do? And then try and combine all of that information to feed the court, to say, this is what we learned. I don't have an opinion necessarily one way or the other. Here is all of the information. You decide. We gather that. That has been lost, in my opinion, in the media.
Yeah, I think that's right. And part of it is probably as you established with social media, if you're not first, you're last. So instead of spending the time to try and gather it all, that you're going to be losing the scoop to an independent journalist now, whatever independent journalists are, because I think a lot of people, virtually anybody, can become an independent journalist now with social media. You create a channel and off you go. So I think there is some of that as well, right? Where they realize if they don't get something out now, then they've lost the opportunity.
Well, did you read the newspaper headline this morning? No, I didn't either. I don't think anyone does.
No. Yeah, fair. I didn't get my paper. My rocking chair is on its way, so hopefully it'll come with the paper. But yeah, I didn't get it yet. But I guess that's a good point. Like I haven't clipped. I go into X and I go into Facebook and I look, Instagram, and I go through and see what sort of the media of the day is, and then messages from individuals.
Yeah, and so just that was the court of public opinion. I mean, we haven't even gotten to court here, Rob. I mean, I don't want to belabor it. So 5 years later, after this member and their family is drawn through this process, they have internal checks and balances with respect to disclosing that there's an ongoing investigation throughout what other court proceedings they'll be involved in. There's promotional issues. There are all of these things they live with. And then you get to court, which is obviously very invasive, right? And I think we're all okay with the idea of somebody's going to quarterback us. That's fine. I get that. However, it's how it's done, because I assure you, the media is going to ramp it right up. And people have already kind of set their opinions because they're like, hey, I remember this. This is that cop who did that.
Yeah.
Even though the trial hasn't started yet, people have already formed an opinion because 5 years ago, there was a headline.
Yeah, and I think to some degree that's probably inevitable. Like there is some degree that once you've had it out there for 5 years or 3 years, whatever the lengthy time frame, with no counter narratives, and to a point, there's only so much of a counter narrative you can have, but you can still have the person supported. But by the time you get to the trial, I think what you want to make sure happens is a fair trial, and I believe in our system, and I think they are. So I don't take bones with that aspect per se. But that isn't the part that I'm hearing as much from the members either, right? It's not that. It's not the trial. It's not the 6-week trial or the 3, whatever that trial is. It's all the circus that goes on for the years leading up to that and why that delay is. And, you know, to use that very trite old saying, you know, justice delayed is justice denied. But that's accurate. And, you know, it's a reason that is a trite old saying is when you wait 5 years, and often, we lose those members. Whether we lose them to who they used to be, or we actually lose them in the service. And tragically, sometimes we actually lose them in that they literally can't handle it and they end up taking their own lives. So we've also seen that. And that, is just absolutely devastating, of course. And I think we can just do better. We have to demand better. It's not going to just change on its own. So I think we have to demand better.
And so we get to trial. Trial, as you said, can be 6 weeks long. I know a member whose trial was in the 50 days before he was acquitted on 3 counts, which would be all 3 counts. But then it's not over, right? So again, unlike the public, we get this extra layer to deal with. So now we have the coroner's inquest, right? You're going to be compelled forward to discuss everything that transpired in another venue, probably a year, maybe 2 years after the trial aspect of things.
Yep.
And usually in that period as well, you're going to get an email from civil litigation saying you're being sued.
How many times have you been sued? How many times have you been sued?
Just twice.
Just twice. I'm a few more than that. I've never lost, though. But like I will say that, the organization generally takes care of you in those incidents because you're one of many. You, the crown, the queen, I guess the king now, the organization. But you can rest assured that's going to happen. Life ended, almost for sure you're going to end up getting sued.
And again, it's not because we did anything wrong. It is just appears to be like a part of the normalized process. And I don't know if that's where counsel has just said like, hey, your loved one was killed. Here are the next steps. So we're going to do this. It's pretty frustrating though. And again, like not trying to take anything away, but this is a podcast about police officers and law enforcement in general. And so now we've kind of put this from the date it happened. We got our 4 to 5 year trial. We got 1 to 2 years later. So now we're talking about like 7 years later. Let's say 6, conservative. So 6 years later, this person can begin their healing journey with the idea that there's not more times that they will have to openly speak of, I don't know what the word, I don't want to say berated, but you can have some pretty aggressive cross-examination come at you in a court. Yeah.
A coroner's inquest, it is sometimes over the top, right? Because they're not there to find fault per se. So
theatrical.
It is over the top sometimes.
And now 6 years later, you can say, okay, now I can only talk about this maybe with my psychologist, as opposed to knowing for the last while, even though one event's done, you're going to have to talk about it again. You're going to have to talk about it again. There's no room for closure for the member who's also still going to work, who's also still daily facing incidents that can lead them to be killed, that they have to protect themselves, Canadians, their co-workers from. And in the back of their mind, they're thinking, I don't want another one of these. I don't know I can handle another one of these. I was helping a gentleman 2 weeks ago, and the day that I was helping him with a new incident was the date he was cleared of a different incident from over a year prior.
Yeah.
And in our exchange, it's like, well, at least this one's behind you.
Yeah, it's we could go through the layers of oversight. If I ever hear someone say there's not enough oversight in police, it drives me absolutely crazy. Not enough oversight. I don't think there's a job with more oversight. Like I mean that. I don't think there is a job. You're a constable on the road. Your corporal reviews your files. Then your watch commander probably reviews it. Some places they have a reader section that reviews your incident. So every file is reviewed. Then you have the CRCC. So you have public complaints, of which there are several thousand a year, where anybody can basically complain about anything. So there's that oversight agency. Then every jurisdiction has a civilian oversight, like the IIO, the SIU, ACER, whatever. Every province has that. Then you've got the courts. Then you've got coroner's inquests. You have code of conducts. There's like 8 layers of oversight. There's 8 layers. I don't know of any job that has that much scrutiny on actions of a member, of an employee. I honestly don't. And then that's the one that probably takes its biggest toll in many cases, is the one that isn't official, which is the public opinion. And that's, to bring us back to that one seems to take as much of a toll as anything else. And I think we have to push back on the way it's done. We have to, in order to change that dial, so that members so they feel that support.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think, like we become police officers. We're young, I would say idealistic. I think most of us maintain that too. Like I still think policing is a very meaningful job.
Yep.
I love the idea of policing. I love policing. And currently I'm doing a job that I like in order to help the people who are doing a job I love.
Yeah.
But I think the issue is, when I was young, somewhere along the world, stereotypes of what the bad guy looked like came to me. And so when I joined policing, I was under the impression, like, watch out for the bad guy. That's where the danger is. You'll be safe in the detachment. You'll be safe with your friends, but watch out for bad guys. And moral injury, which you touched on earlier, is worse at times, because you kind of know that if somebody is got a gun and they're trying to shoot you, they're the bad guy. Okay. But later, when the organization that you've given a lot of your life to, that you've bled for, that you believe in, that you've worked nights, days, holidays for, doesn't say anything, when something is clearly a lie, a fallacy, that hurts. That hurts a lot, because that's not the bad guy that we thought we were going to fight. That's not the person that we had kind of set our moral compass for and say, that's the battlefront.
Yeah, 100%.
When
that expectation.
The wounds come from behind, you're like, what?
And you're trained that way. As you said, for whatever point you joined police or you thought about it before you joined. I don't know that there are very few incidents in my service where I was even mad at a bad guy, whatever a bad guy is, right? Like, because I sort of I'm like, yeah, there you go. I sort of expect criminals to do criminal things. Like, that was my expectation. I'm like, I'm going to be a cop because there are these bad people that want to do bad things. So when they did bad things, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, what? You broke into a house? What? How shocking. Like that. Yeah, that's why literally I exist in this job, is because people like you exist. That is what we do. Great. But yeah, it wasn't that long in where I was like, oh wow, there's a lot of hurt and long-term pain that members of any police force are experiencing from their own experience within their force. And that's the stuff that seems that I spend a lot of time talking to people about. Is it's not so much like, yeah, there'll be a use of force incident they'll be involved with, and we'll talk to them about that. Fair enough. But then after that, it's like the treatment of them by those that they expect more from is what really hurts. It's almost always that. It's very rarely do they call about how awful the incident was. It's almost always about the treatment by the organization, the media, the oversight agency, whatever it is. It's about that. It's about the people that they have a higher expectation for, and they
we can do
betrayed.
A whole episode on management versus leadership, certainly.
Well, yeah, and it's yeah, certainly everybody in management is now called a leader, and that is absolutely inaccurate. And I'm not taking away from the true leaders, because we have lots. but you just by virtue of position. Recently, I did I've said this all along. I respect people, not position. That's me. I'm not saying everybody else should jump on that. That's how I am. I don't know whether it's how I was raised, probably not. But that's how I am. I respect people, not position. But I respect a lot of people. But it's not because they became, a white shirt or whatever. That doesn't gain my respect automatically. How they carry themselves, how they take care of their people. And the further along I get, it's more about the latter. How do they take care of their people? Because, you can get a lot of people to do a job and do it relatively well. But taking care of the people that do their job and do it well, that's a leader to me. It's very little about checking the boxes and making sure that, you want to make sure logistics are taken care of, uniforms are bought, all that kind of stuff. But that goes back to taking care of your.
Sure, there's a mission and you're going to get there, but it's the decision-making model you use to drive that mission forward.
Yeah, 100%. I think that probably wraps it up for.
Right. And it's a good time now at the end to let you know that we don't represent any single organization and we only have opinions that are that of our own. Our opinion is not a factual base on anything, nor is it legal advice. It's simply something that Rob and Chris thought today.
That's right. And thank you for watching and looking forward to the next one. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, bye. See you soon. Stay safe.